The attempt to overthrow the British Prime Minister failed, but the result is devastating. The former Conservative Party leader is pushing for consequences. And there are a lot of reactions on that. Boris Johnson has once again proven his staying power. On Monday evening, the British Prime Minister survived the vote of no confidence that had been called against him by his Conservative Tory faction and, of course, among other things, because of the Partygate affair. How long he will remain standing remains an open question even after the vote. After all, 148 of the 359 Conservative members of the House of Commons voted no confidence in Johnson. His position of power is thus probably considerably weakened. Johnson struggled to portray the result as a great success. I quoted him several times, but it's as bad as ever. "I think this is an extremely good, positive, conclusive and decisive result," said the Conservative Party leader in a television interview after the vote. And he said, "What that means is that we can now move forward as a government and focus on things that I think people really care about." No. What he cares about, we all know. He portrayed the criticism of his person as a pure media hype. He was happy to now only be able to talk about his government's priorities and no longer about all the stuff that is of obsessive and compulsive interest to journalists. Well, the former Conservative Party leader William Hague has now called on Johnson to resign. The head of government no longer has the authority to lead his party and the country, the former foreign minister wrote in an article for the Times newspaper. And Hague wrote, "Deep down, he should recognize the whole thing and prepare to find an exit that will spare both the party and the country such anguish and uncertainty." So Boris Johnson survives a no-confidence vote. Well, he is a survivor. And again, the ailing Prime Minister does not have to resign, but the mood in his party is poisoned. But is he now threatened with a farewell in installments? The good news is there is singing for Boris Johnson. The bad one is it's a farewell song. This Monday, just outside Johnson's office on Downing Street. The Bay City Rollers' 1975 pop song "Bye Bye Baby" rang out from demonstrators. A lard song, actually. However, the protesters sing it with slightly different lyrics. "Bye bye Boris, Boris goodbye," waving their arms. Johnson sped past them in his armored limousine. And shortly afterwards it becomes clear the farewell song came prematurely. Johnson survived the no-confidence vote by his own party on Monday night, as we all know. And just to remind of that, of the 359 Tory MPs, 148 voted against him, 180 would have been needed to vote him out, and he won. His predecessor, Theresa May, was only able to stay in office for a few months after such a vote. But by comparison, it seems a little as if the current vote is just the latest turn in London's political merry-go-round. And one person remained firmly in his post, and that's Boris Johnson. The British Prime Minister has always had a number of scandals and has survived them all politically. He's a phenomenon, kind of a stand-up man for his party. But will he make it again now? The number of his scandals is increasing, the mood in his party is poisoned, the tone in the media and the public is increasingly irritated. Johnson could now face a farewell that could drag on for a long time. And some are certain yesterday's Monday set in motion a farewell spiral that even Johnson might not be able to stop. The trigger for the no-confidence vote of his own people is the so-called Partygate, among others. While Johnson sent his country into strict lockdown, he himself partied excessively at his office. Not only did the numerous guests drink copious amounts of alcohol, some threw up against the wall, the cleaning staff had to clear up the remains of the celebrations, while the rest of the country was called on by the head of government to meet as few people as possible. It is the preliminary culmination of Johnson's double standards. Now these celebrations could herald its end. Lies and tricks were his model of success for a long time. With striking duplicity, Johnson has thus promoted himself to the highest government office in the former empire. The assessment of experts is not only devastating for the Prime Minister, but also bitter for democracy in the kingdom. Johnson broke the law, misled Parliament, and actually shredded the ministerial code, summarizes historian Peter Hennessy. Even before his time as a politician, Johnson made the experience that untruths, even if they are publicly denounced, do not have to obstruct his career. He started out in the 1990s as an observer of British politics and wrote as a kind of journalist for the country's most renowned newspapers. First for the Times, then as a columnist for the Daily Telegraph, and later as editor-in-chief for the Spectator. Allegations from colleagues have accompanied him for years. According to criticism, Johnson would come up with quotes, spins, and entire stories. But he was only fired from the editorial office of the Times and then even achieved higher positions in other newspapers. His transition into politics is quite similar. Johnson, as editor-in-chief of the Spectator, has actually promised not to work as a politician. Nevertheless, he became a member of Parliament in 2001, which his employer acknowledged as incredibly double-dealing. Johnson denies having an extramarital affair despite overwhelming evidence. In 2005, he admitted to having used cocaine as a young adult. In 2008, he denied his own statements from back then and continues to make a career. He knows how to make the most of the chaos and the heated atmosphere surrounding the Brexit elections. He repeatedly claims that Great Britain transfers £350 million to the EU every week. Experts then accuse him of misleading and abusing statistics. When Theresa May fell in 2019, Johnson stood by and took over as Prime Minister despite dire warnings that Johnson was unfit for the job. With the renovation of his Downing Street flat, Johnson ensured a cascade of further revelations and negative headlines in 2021 and 2022. He is said to have redecorated his apartment for more than £100,000, but the Prime Minister actually only has £30,000 available for it. Johnson has to face allegations of corruption and investigations, and he repeatedly denies knowing where the money came from. It's similar to Partygate a few months later then. Johnson looks damaged, but gets off lightly. It goes back and forth, the scandals pile up, and Johnson stays. Now, a vote of no confidence is actually the beginning of the end in British politics. Even if the Prime Minister survived now, Johnson's predecessors were forced to leave shortly thereafter. So it was not only with Theresa May, but also with Margaret Thatcher. And there are several crucial components to Boris Johnson's political future. If the 148 MPs who wanted to remove him from office vote against him in Parliament in the future, he will no longer have a majority. He would be a Prime Minister on call. The question is also whether there's an uncomfortable dynamic going on for Johnson beyond that, because the vote could become the starting point for the fact that party friends are increasingly turning away. With the Tories, they have long understood that Johnson's style is causing massive damage to the office. However, there's currently no potential successor in sight. Johnson has clung so tightly to the Prime Minister's chair that many fear he won't let go. But one thing is certain, it has never been as tight for him within the party as it is now. Prominent Conservative members of Parliament publicly criticized Johnson as not viable after the narrow vote at the head of the party and state. Other colleagues are publicly considering changing the rules that give the Prime Minister a grace period of 1 year after a vote of no confidence has been lost. They tried it with May as well. Johnson could then be confronted again much earlier with a vote of no confidence from within his own party and possibly be overthrown. The downward spiral is imminent. The next few weeks will show whether they can actually remove Johnson from office this time. Although I know that some people in other parts of Great Britain would love him to stay, but not for the reasons he would like. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.